All right, welcome to the Tuesday, November 24th special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I'll start with roll call. Carla Desjardins, present. Sean Peterson.
Present.
Raz Shivik. Lindsay Jocelyn.
Roz is entering now, Carla.
Oh, okay, thank you. And my heater just kicked on. Raz Shivik.
Hello.
Hi, Raz. All right. John Meyer. Oh, I see John coming on now. And Lindsay Jocelyn. Okay. Bill Martell. Oh, I see Bill's hand.
Bill is here.
All right. I see him. Kathy Mestemaker Harris. Jared Fournier. Okay. And then staff, Ryan Bray.
Present.
Marianne Shinati.
Present.
And Sonia Chapman.
Present.
All right, thank you. So I will appoint Bill for Lindsay. So Bill, you're a full seated member tonight. And moving on to public hearing, Z 2020-1887 of Plainfield Materials, LLC, requesting a special permit for a gravel mining operation on property located at 143-151 Plainfield Pike Road, Plainfield, map 17, block 36, lots 68 and 68A, Industrial 1 zoning district, and map 25, block 36, lot 32, Industrial 2 zoning district. Do we have someone speaking for the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Desjardins. Norm Tebow from Killingly Engineering, here representing the applicant this evening. I want to thank the commission for holding this special meeting tonight. We really appreciate it. And just a quick recap on what we're doing here. The property is approximately 123 acres. We are proposing to do some gravel mining activities on approximately 54 acres. It's a three-phased project. And the total amount of material we're proposing to remove is 3,075,000 cubic yards from the site. As you know, at your meeting a couple of weeks ago, we received comments from CHA, and we received them, just before the meeting. So we didn't feel as though we were adequately prepared to respond to them at that time. So we made the modifications to the plans, added some things, and got them back to CHA, and they were kind enough to turn them around and take a look at what we have done. So essentially, what they had were 15 comments, most of which have been completely addressed at this point. There are a couple of remaining minor issues that I spoke with Mr. Eaton from CHA today at length, and these couple of items I think are relatively simple to resolve, and they really kind of involve more of a housekeeping type edits to the plans, where we just need to define some of the erosion control measures and dewatering measures a little more clearly to make sure that the excavation is done properly. So going into the CHA comments, one of them was the groundwater well locations and information table must be included in the site plan for section 1232-416 on the plans. So what we've done is we've proposed locations for monitoring wells that have been included on sheets 3 and 4 of the plans. And what CHA has recommended that the design engineer indicated actually put these groundwater monitoring wells in prior to excavation, and take levels of the groundwater prior to the activities occurring on site, which we have absolutely no problem with doing. With that in mind, because we haven't done that prior to this application being submitted, we have submitted a formal request to waive the requirement of groundwater monitoring for this application. Ryan has a copy of that I submitted for the record. And what we will do as part of this project is to monitor prior to and throughout, and therefore actually, meeting that regulation during the duration of this project. So we respectfully request to waive that requirement at this time. Secondly, the test pits are marked draft. They do not provide groundwater information required by section 1232-416. What I did find out is that even though these are marked draft, it is the only copy of the report that's available. It was obtained by the applicant upon purchase of the property, and to the best of our knowledge, these the groundwater elevations and the excavations that they provided with this geotechnical report are accurate. So what we've done is add the locations of these test pits to the plans, and we've also added a table showing what was encountered in each of these test holes, the depth to groundwater in areas where it was encountered, and also based on those, we've taken an assumption where the direction of groundwater flow actually goes. And it does appear that it flows radially from the high point of the site out radially toward the wetlands. We do question whether or not these wetlands themselves are groundwater recharged, because one of the test pits in particular that was excavated down to, I believe, 14 feet, just adjacent to the southwestern portion of the wetlands, indicated groundwater, I believe, 12 feet deep. And the wetlands at that point were pretty much at the surface. So it appears, at least by that test pit, that these are surface wetlands that are the result of a perched water table and just some very poorly drained soils that keep these on the surface. You also discussed a basin for pumping should we have to do any dewatering for the excavation, if dewatering for the excavation is required. So based upon the conversation that Mr. Eaton and I had this afternoon, we will add a little more detail to that on the plan. We did supply some very basic details as to dewatering, how to arrange the sumps, discharge points, and so forth. But what we'll take a little better look at is, if we do have to pump it, what size pumps would we have to utilize for this? And that can really be based upon the permeability of the soils in the area. And we can estimate what the maximum amount of groundwater discharge might occur at any particular time. That's information we can add to the plans. It's simply detailing it a little better so that if groundwater is encountered, then there is a procedure to go by to make sure that it is addressed properly. Regarding temporary sedimentation basins, what we did on the plans is we showed the proposed stormwater basins to be used as temporary sedimentation basins, but what Mr. Eaton and I discussed this afternoon was instead of those basins, just doing temporary sediment traps, which are very small, no more than 5 acres for these temporary sediment traps. They don't require outlet structures. They don't require cleaning. And the nice simple thing about these is that you just determine how big they have to be based upon the soil type. You put them in the specified locations, And then when you're done with them, you simply fill them in. It's a much simpler way to go about it, actually, than what I went for on the plans. So, we'd like to keep it a little bit simpler. And what we will do is define that on the plans and modify the plans actually to simplify the temporary sediment control on the site. There was a note that says that there will be less than 5 acres of soil disturbance at any time, which didn't seem to apply to this project. So we removed that note from the plans. Regarding the drainage design, there was one 2-year storm in one of the drainage areas where we had an increase in runoff, and it was very minor in nature. It was 0.07 cubic feet per second for a 2-year storm. And by simply making one of the stormwater basins 6 inches deeper, we can address that, and we can achieve a reduction in the peak runoff rate for that particular storm. The reviewing engineers asked us to clarify some drainage results in Table 5 of the drainage report. And what that was, because portions of this of drainage system, the overflow mechanisms will be connecting to the drainage system on the Plainfield storage and garages property. That particular table was put together, which basically analyzed both sites in combination to verify that we weren't increasing runoff rates from that property to the adjacent property, which is currently where the solar field is, and we have demonstrated that. Says the stormwater basin at the recently constructed concrete batch plant on the adjacent lot must be completed prior to additional flows. We concur with that. The basin right now is partially constructed, probably 75 to 80% constructed. So it's a matter of just finishing the final grading and putting the outlet control structures. As you know, this year has been incredibly dry. They really haven't seen much flow in that area at all. And one of the things that we did not even account for was the fact that that basin is constructed in very well-drained sands and gravels, and we haven't accounted for any infiltration that might occur there. So we feel as though it's it's sized appropriately and conservatively as well. The excavation results more than 5 acres of soil disturbance and a registration with the Connecticut DEEP under the general permit for the discharge of stormwater and dewatering wastewaters from construction activities will be required. That is a registration typically applied for after local approvals are received, and we concur that that is required. And we have been informed by the applicant that they'd like us to submit that application for them. The proposed design includes a direct discharge of stormwater from the Plainfield Materials property to the adjacent Plainfield garages and storage lot, both which are owned by the applicant. Drainage easement and maintenance agreement between the two parcels will need to be recorded in the land records to eliminate future issues with changes in ownership of either parcel. We concur with that, and we will put that in place. The proposed level spreader detail must be updated to match the plan. Detail must also be provided for the proposed riprap weirs. We have provided those details on the plans. An engineered loam is recommended for the stormwater basins to take advantage of possible infiltration into the well-drained soils. We have specified a sieve analysis for an engineered loam on the plans. Erosion controls such as straw wattles or wood chip berms must be provided at the toe of slope in the proposed stormwater basins. This will protect any infiltrative capacity of the basins while the slopes are being stabilized. We did that along the upgradient side of the basin. One of the CHA's comments was we have to extend that erosion control around the entire perimeter, interior perimeter of the basin, which we will do. The excavation notes on sheet 12 of the plans indicate the operation will be completed in a down cutting method to maintain a self-contained active excavation area. We actually took that note off the plan because the down cutting essentially kind of starts at the top of the hill and cuts down, and you have slopes on both sides. This particular excavation activity will not do that. This goes back to once again the water control and the temporary sedimentation traps. So as we are excavating this slope, these water control methods and the temporary sedimentation traps will be incorporated into the design to accommodate for this type of excavation that we're proposing on this particular project. The construction entrance location with the anti-tracking pad must be shown on the sediment and erosion control plan. We've added that to sheet 4 of the plans. Due to the site of the earthwork disturbance, CHA recommends that the erosion controls and earthwork operations be monitored. The design engineer should indicate the anticipated time frame for earthwork at the site. We do absolutely will monitor the erosion controls here. It's difficult to say how long this particular excavation activity will take. It's really as you know, Plainfield Materials has a crushing and screening operation now. This will be used to supplement that operation. Essentially, the materials that come out of this excavation will be utilized by Plainfield Materials. They'll be crushed and sorted and screened and utilized for some of their other projects that they're working on, as well as for sale to the general public. So I anticipate many years, and I think that's probably the best answer I can give you at this point. It really is a supply and demand type of operation, and they're not an operation like ONG Industries or Russell Materials, where they just import and export just hundreds of thousands of cubic yards every year. We don't believe that's going to be the case here. And then lastly, we had submitted a proposal for the restoration costs, which essentially are clearing and grubbing first of all, and then silt fences, jute netting for slope stabilization, loam and seed disturbed areas. What we did is break it down into phases. For the first phase, $158,075. Phase 2, $208,700. And phase 3, $227,730. We request that these bonds be applied per phase. One of the things that Ryan suggested is just taking the bond for phase 3, which is the largest, utilizing that for each phase and just rolling it over to the next phase as it comes up. So I personally don't feel that's a huge issue. If that's something that the commission feels comfortable about, we can certainly discuss that as well. And I think Mr. Santilli, who is the applicant and representing Plainfield Materials this evening, I'm sure he may have some discussion on that or some opinions as to how we'd like to proceed on it as well. That essentially is it. I think we did discuss last time. There were a couple of letters from abutting property owners that we discussed. I believe I addressed the concerns. One of them being that the applicants were accessing the site from a neighborhood area, which they weren't doing. I think we explained that was done by the previous owners had sold some stone off the site, and the company that had gone in there to actually acquire the stone had utilized that entrance. We will be utilizing the existing entrance at the Plainfield garages and, the Plainfield materials site. They have an existing entrance there. It's a nice wide paved entrance. It certainly can accommodate any large trucks that might be going in and out of the site, which have been doing it now for a couple of years. We don't anticipate any significant additional traffic. And in fact, the fact that lately they've been actually importing material into the site for processing because they've exhausted the material on their property. So there's a good chance that truck traffic may be slightly reduced as a result of this. And I would request that, like I said, Mr. Eaton and I had discussions this afternoon. If you have any questions of Mr. Eaton or myself, we could certainly answer them for you this evening.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, I want to show that Lindsay Jocelyn is in attendance. So Lindsay will be the full seated member. So Bill, you will return to your alternate spot for the evening. Mr. Eaton, I do see that you are here. Are there any comments that you feel need further clarification or discussion before I ask for public comment?
No, I don't think so. If the commission has any questions or they would like to have anything explained in more detail, or why we made certain comments or have any discussion or anything like that, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so if there's anyone on the call from the public who has a comment or question, state your name, what your comment or question is. So floor is open to the public. And just be sure to unmute yourself. Okay, seeing and hearing none. Commission members, if you have items that need further clarification or questions for the applicant or our engineer who is in attendance, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, one for you. The access onto Dow Road, would they be willing to block that off with rock?
I'm sure they would. There's absolutely no proposal to use that access to Dow Road, and the plans don't show that, and there's really no need for it.
Yes, that would be no problem.
That might make some of those residents over there who are complaining at ease.
Mhm. We're amenable to that.
Another question from commission members?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I have some concerns regarding the lack of the groundwater data. This is a large site. I mean, what is it, 150 plus acres? Gravel deposits of this size are typically glacial outwash. There may be some perched water table in there, but more than likely, it's overlying an aquifer. The bedrock was encountered in several test pits shown on the plans. My concern is that excavating a large area like this without first knowing the groundwater elevation could lead to problems down the line. It could result in change of grading if groundwater is higher than anticipated. I'd like to see some groundwater data at least through this spring, before excavation begins. I mean, if groundwater is higher than anticipated, it could result in a complete change of the grading plan. One thing I would like to see is a transect through the site showing groundwater elevations, bedrock elevations, and the elevation of excavation. And the other thing too, without knowing the depth of groundwater, you don't know the saturated thickness, and in the event that dewatering would be required, you can't calculate the flow volume. You wouldn't be able to size your pumps, and you wouldn't be able to size the basins to handle the dewatering effluent. So I think the groundwater, lack of groundwater data on this site is an issue that needs to be resolved.
And just to clarify, Norm, is that what you were requesting a waiver of? Could you clarify what your waiver request?
We're requesting a waiver of it for this, for the hearing and for the application. We are going to proceed with groundwater monitoring. We are proposing to put in 6 groundwater monitoring wells. CHA has recommended that we obtain levels from these wells prior to the excavation, which we certainly have no issue with. And as far as encountering groundwater, one of the things that I did speak about, I know that these plans, the way they're presented, do look like, wow, you're going to have these huge areas that are going to be open up, and they're just going to have the potential for these groundwater issues. But what we will be doing in order to limit the amount of potential groundwater issues is to keep the excavations down to a minimum of 5 acres or less for each of these temporary sedimentation basins. So the idea is to have this potentially a 5-acre area opened up, deal with the sedimentation basin, and as that slope moves forward and as you excavate on that open slope face, these basins and the groundwater collection or removal activities will be based within these small sort of micro phases, for lack of a better term. So if there's if one of the phases is 27 acres and we have 5 or 6 different interim phases within this large phase, then I think that the groundwater is going to be a little more manageable. As far as changing the grades go, if anything, I think if excessive groundwater is encountered, then if anything, it's not going to be more excavation. There will actually be less excavation than what's actually shown on the plans here. If something is encountered where where they don't feel as though it's a good idea to move forward because of say they just I don't know, hit some sort of a vein or so forth, then obviously precautions are going to have to be taken, and alternative excavation activities will have to be analyzed at that point to make sure that we do it in a fashion that's appropriate and responsible.
Norm, what separation are you planning on maintaining from the proposed surface grade to the groundwater?
Oh, we will be excavating into groundwater in some areas. We have no doubt about that. But where possible, around the perimeters and out towards some of the areas where there actually are gravel deposits, we'd like to maintain 4 to 6 feet above them.
Can I chime in?
Sure.
So that is an excellent question and comment, and that is one of our big concerns here, because some of those test pits, show that you're going to be excavating into 30 feet of groundwater, and that's essentially what you folks are approving tonight. And so what we want to see on the plan, and what I talked to Norm about, is how. So you're gonna have these well points, or however the dewatering is going to happen. Where is that water going to be discharged to? If it's going to be discharged to a pumping basin, is the basin going to be properly sized for the pumping rate? And where is that pumping basin going to discharge to? So you're going to end up with some fairly long, steep slopes here. We want to make sure that water is going to be conveyed in a safe, non-erosive manner, and in a way that's not going to impact adjacent properties. So, you know, these are some things that I talked to Norm about, and trying to make sure that these things are indicated on the plan so that town staff and the commission knows how these things are going to be dealt with prior to running into any issues or anything like that.
If I may, one of the things that we talked about is, for instance, you know, putting in a curtain drain at the toe of the slope, so that if there is discharge of groundwater through the slope, if it's seeping out, at least there's a point at which it can be collected, and then the curtain drain can discharge either to a basin, or it can go to the proposed stormwater basin. And that in turn will keep the water from running across the excavation area where there's activity and there are machines going across it. So that's one of the methods that we talked about, you know, as well as you know, potentially putting in some well points above the excavation to lower the groundwater table in the first place. And but you know, we certainly are in tune to that, and we understand what the potential impact may be. So that, which is one of the reasons why that we've recommended, we've shown the locations of these monitoring wells around the perimeter of the site, that we are going to actually get some good readings prior to excavation, so that we really know hopefully what we're up against at that point.
Norm, question. The use of the site after the excavation is done is an industrial park, correct?
Correct.
So if you're going to be excavating below groundwater, what are you going to do? Bring backfill in?
No, it's a matter of controlling it. If you're excavating below groundwater, you control it at the base of the slopes where the potential for it to seep out may be. So, you know, at that point, the site will be stabilized. We'll have stabilized slopes, and I think you know, the critical point is going to be, you know, during the excavation itself. But once the site is stabilized and you've got the mechanisms in place to make sure that this groundwater is addressed with the final graded site, I believe that we can proceed forward and do the industrial park as we've shown. And obviously, that industrial park right now is conceptual in nature. So we would have to come back to the commission in order to do that.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Attorney Paul, the applicant. John, I think you're thinking that it's a big bowl and we're digging right down into the water table. Norm, correct me if I'm wrong. These monitoring wells are all on the east side of the property, right up against the wetland.
Well,
So,
yeah,
so we're getting this water level that's not through the whole property. From east to west, the land is a significant elevation change. So, you know, when we were going to go from the west towards the east of taking the material out, there will be no water for 3/4 of the way through the property until we get more towards the east side where the water is. Correct, right, Norm?
that's where the bug, because that's the higher elevation. And once again, I you know, as I said, it does not appear that the wetlands themselves are groundwater fed. They're perched wetlands. So, and I think, you know, the reason why we want to put the monitoring wells in the positions that we're showing, because we want to be able to monitor the groundwater levels in those areas to make sure that we're not impacting the wetlands.
Correct. And as we're working, we're going to be working with this space that if there's any water coming, we'll be able to control it.
Right.
It's not like we're going to be digging a big bowl and having to create it. I just think that overlooking a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's and as you say, I mean, it's not like we're going to go out there and there's going to be 27 acres of open land and all of a sudden, you know, every drop of water in the ground is just going to be discharging out the slopes. the slopes are going to be worked for years at a time. And they'll be gradually worked so that if there are groundwater issues or if there are issues with water discharging from the slopes, then they'll be able to be dealt with in an appropriate manner based upon the smaller amount of excavated area that we're going to be working within at the time.
The monitoring wells are about 30 feet lower than the top of the hill right now.
Yeah.
Before we even go into the grade on the lower side of the east side where the monitoring wells are. Correct, Norm?
That the existing ones, yeah. The existing ones,
The
yeah.
hill alone is roughly 30 feet higher at least than where the monitoring wells are on the bottom of the hill before we even start cutting. So there's a big hill that's got to come away before we even get to that grade.
So just to clarify Chuck's comment, so on the plan, it doesn't indicate where or how the discharge will be handled at this time. So would you say that's a deficiency of the application as it is right now? I'm directing that to our engineer, Chuck.
All right, if I can get the unmute to work here. Yes, I want to see how that groundwater is going to be conveyed, away from the excavated area and have a plan for how that's going to be discharged.
And that is not presently accounted for in what has been submitted thus far.
Correct.
Okay. Now, as to the waiver of the groundwater monitoring, I guess I'm failing to understand what the mechanism is or why the waiver would be requested when it appears that it is something that is necessary to determine discharge and depths.
Right, and I think the intention is to, we don't have that information at the moment, but we are proposing to get that information prior to the commencement of the excavation activities. That's where we're, so go ahead,
Norm,
Chuck.
if I can jump in. The way the regulation is written is that the groundwater monitoring information is to be submitted with the application. So what I believe the applicant is requesting is, they're submitting their application and they're looking to do the groundwater monitoring after the application process. They're not necessarily looking to not do the groundwater monitoring. They're looking to do it after it's been submitted.
Which means public hearing would be closed. So then whatever information comes from that after the fact would not be open for public review, discussion, or comment. Am I correct about that?
I would agree to that, I think.
So essentially, we're being asked to bypass a requirement of an application for speed, and we may be sacrificing due diligence and public participation of information.
And the issue that I have is that the groundwater, knowing the elevation of groundwater, is a very important piece of information as it pertains to the grading of the site. So if the groundwater is significantly different from what's being literally assumed at this point, it's going to change, could change the grading significantly. And really, that's what this project is all about, is grading, because that's what we're going to end up with at the end of the day with this project, is a large excavation. I think moving forward without that information is like trying to build a building without any design plans, or at least the basis of a design.
So this is a public hearing. So if there's anyone on the call who has a comment or a question regarding this application, this is your opportunity. So just unmute yourself, state your name for the record. And then this is also opportunity for commission members to ask any questions of the applicant or our engineer who is sacrificing vacation time to be with us tonight, which I greatly appreciate, so thank you. So are there any other questions from the public or from commission members?
I got one more. Is there gonna be blasting on this site? There's a lot of ledge up in that area. Do we plan on taking it down?
We would anticipate that there may be areas, yes, that require blasting. You know, and that's typically handled by the fire marshal when there is blasting, and the blasting companies have to obtain the permit from the fire marshal in order to proceed, as well as do their due diligence with basically foundation surveys and so forth around the perimeter of the site to make sure that no harm is done to any of the abutting properties.
Do you have any idea how much ledge is actually in there? Because I know going up 14A is pretty thick.
We've got some, it looks as though based upon the test pit information that, the highest point of the site, which is sort of like a big knob, it appears that there's ledge there. That appears to be, maybe several acres in area. I know there are a lot of boulders there. If the site is anything like what the Plainfield material site is like, and what they've encountered in excavating within their own property, there are a number of large boulders, and actually the test pits indicate that as well. One of the nice things about the geotechnical report is that what it does is give the number of boulders and the sizes of boulders encountered in each layer that they encountered when they did it. So there appears to be quite a few rocks, which is kind of what Plainfield Materials is after, because it produces some nice products, either some crushed stone or riprap, or different sizes, anything from 3/4 inch stone up to large riprap. This stone is very good for it. They found that it's a very high quality rock that they've been encountering.
Any other questions or comments from the public or board members?
Hello, Polly Osier from Mooslip. I just agree with Carla that everything should be in place before we actually approve this. Because if we don't know exactly what they're going to do and how much groundwater is going to be encountered, things should be in place so the public is aware of what's happening with all this. So I think the application should have everything it needs before it's actually approved.
Thank you. Any other comments from public or board members? Okay, so for board members, what we have to determine is whether we're going to close this public hearing or if we're going to continue that in order to get additional information. I think I've made my stance clear, but if board members have a different determination or confirmation, I would entertain a motion on the public hearing.
How long would it take for them to get that information?
Well, there are a couple of monitoring wells out there now. We could obtain that information as early as next week. Go out there and take some levels in some of the monitoring wells and get that information.
So that you would be prepared for the December 8th meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, ultimately, we'd like to get. We'd like to add more groundwater monitoring wells, but I believe that we could obtain some good information to give to the commission and to discuss at that point. Yes.
Okay.
Can I just throw in there? I don't remember the regulations exactly, but I believe that the regulations require a certain time period of groundwater monitoring. So if the commission is looking to meet like the full letter of the law or of the regulation, you should let the applicant know that versus waiting another month and then saying, well, this isn't enough information, I guess. Does
What
that
would
make
be a
sense?
recommended time frame?
Well, the thing is, we're coming off of rather extreme drought. Now, we've had one really good storm, but that's not going to cure it by any means. So whatever we're looking at in this time frame is going to be lower than normal.
Actually, John, I just received an update on the drought status, and we are almost back to normal levels, and another decent rain event will probably put us back on track.
But likely the time frame needed would be more than 2 weeks.
They were expecting that the rain we're going to receive around Thanksgiving will bring us back up to about normal levels.
But they would then have to monitor those levels for a period of time in order to get the data and information necessary to determine. So that would probably be more than a 2-week period of time.
I think that's kind of what the regulation speaks to.
So really, we'd probably be looking for information at our January meeting, not our December meeting.
Ryan, do you remember what the time period is for groundwater monitoring for the regulation?
Depth to groundwater measured at least 3 times during the official wet season, with measurements made at least 1 week apart and direction of groundwater flow.
So you'd need a minimum 3 weeks, if I'm hearing that right.
According to this, yes.
Okay.
In the spring, right? Wet season?
Well, wet season is pretty much any time throughout the winter.
Yeah, wet season. I think we're in the wet season right now.
Mm-hmm.
What monitoring can we do though to, the biggest portion is a rock hill. What are we gonna get from results from a rock hill? The results that you guys are looking for is only on the east side near the wetlands where we have monitoring wells right now. It's not the whole site.
Those can be monitored for a long period of time.
Yeah, they've been in since the apple orchard. So those are not changing. The rest of the entire site, I think you guys are overlooking. It's all hard pan and no water. There's no water. I can take excavator, I dig 25, 30 foot holes. You're not getting any water. It's all because I'm going to hit rock. I'm going to hit rock.
Well,
So,
Norm, we have test pit data from the prior property owner. So what does that show for the rest of the site?
Yeah, I don't know. I have it right at the tip of my fingers here, but
Okay. So what I'm going to say is the information we need to make the determination is not present with us this evening. So I put it to my board members to make the determination whether to continue or close this public hearing. It can be continued to our next meeting, December 8th, at which time would give Norm the opportunity to review the data that they already have on hand in order to provide the discharge and flow information that we need to sufficiently do our own due diligence on this project. And I understand businesses want to move as rapidly as possible, but as a member of this board, it is our job to balance the needs of a business with the needs of the residents of the town. And this property is surrounded by residential areas. So I do not want to sacrifice diligence for speed. That's my perspective on this. So given that, the board members can decide how to proceed. So I have 5 full-seated board members this evening.
I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing until December.
I second.
Any additional comment? I thought I heard somebody.
Yeah, I'd like to get regular maps that we can actually read. These ones on a piece of paper aren't big enough to read, to delineate anything.
And I do want to talk to staff about making sure that we have all the documentation prior to the day of the meeting, because most of us work full-time, so an hour or two to review is not sufficient. So we need to make sure that we get all the materials we need, especially in a virtual environment, that we're able to review all the materials prior to the day of the meeting. So that's my request to staff for our next meeting. All right, so I have a motion on the floor to continue to our December 8th meeting, and I did hear a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, all in favor, so the public hearing will continue to our December 8th meeting. So continuing on, so that was continued to December. So we do have one other item for our special meeting, and that is item B, CGS 824 referral of Kevin Cunningham requesting a favorable recommendation for sale of lots 25 and 30 in the Plainfield Industrial Park. And Kevin, are you giving the summary on this, or staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the Board of Selectmen meeting, we also had proposed to move this forward to the Board of Finance, and they were favorable with us as well. So we're now coming in front of the Planning and Zoning for a favorable recommendation for that last set of lots 25 and 30. There are some people interested at this point, but we're looking to make sure we can go forward with it. So that's why we're coming forward in front of your board.
So it's my understanding this is the statutory requirement that zoning approve prior to proceeding?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a sequencing issue with the boards? Is there a particular order the boards have to go in?
We've already gone through already gone through the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Finance is going to be, was okay with this. So we're just going through step by step. There's no sequence. It just needs each board to require a approval to go forward.
And if I could add, Mary Ann Chinati, Town Planner, the favorable recommendation will bring, if this goes to town meeting, will require only a simple majority vote at town meeting to sell the properties. If the commission forwards an unfavorable recommendation on the sale, then a 2/3 majority would be required at town meeting.
And it's my understanding, because these lots are in the industrial park, they're already zoned for the purpose, but any applicants would have to come forward with site plans. So no actions would be taken on those properties until they've come back to the commission for site plan review.
Correct.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, any items for discussion among the board members? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion from the board.
Make a motion that we're in favor of the sale of the lots in the industrial park.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by John and a second by Roz. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay, so we have one abstention. The motion passes for favorable recommendation for sale of lots 25 and 30 in the Plainfield Industrial Park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And given this is a special meeting and I see no other items on the agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion by Roz, second by Sean, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Stay